Should we be in the Middle East? Yes and no. This is a complicated subject, and I am by no means am I an expert. I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for the experiences that I have and the limited studying that I've done. But here's my 2 cents. Islam needs to go through a reformation, and I believe they are going through a reformation. Very much the same way Christianity went through and then needed to go through their reformation. There's a lot of similarities between the two, between orthodoxy and then a new way of looking at the text within the religion, within the religious dogma. Unfortunately for all of us, if we are to use Christianity as an example, it's going to last a couple hundred years and it's going to be murderously bloody. Because the Reformation of the church was anything but clean. Well, Islam, I expect, is going to be no different. And Islam's kind of been in a Reformation for about 100 years anyways. Off and on. But it's far from over. And I think we can do what we can to facilitate that Reformation. And facilitate as much as we can a soft landing on that Reformation, because here's what's going to happen if we don't. The orthodoxy within Islam is fundamentally incompatible with Western values, period. So if you like freedom of thought, if you like freedom of religion, if you like equality of opportunity, if those are things that you find valuable and that you live your life by, Orthodox Islam is fundamentally incompatible with that. And anytime there's a critical minority of Islam in any country they have ever been to, period, in every single example where this has happened, within a few dozen years, with between 80 and 90% of that population is Muslim. And once a critical percentage of that population becomes Islamic, the passive, peaceful face of Islam fades as more orthodox, dogmatic Islam takes its place. Now, I'm not saying we can't have a peaceful transition to Islam. I'm just using the history as a guide. And you know what? I like Western values. I appreciate equality of opportunity. I like the freedom of thought. I like freedom of speech. I think fundamentally, freedom of speech in and of itself is the most important right there is, in my opinion. And I think the evidence backs it up. Without freedom of speech and freedom of expression, it is the foundation on which all other rights are founded. Because that freedom allows for people to seek the truth. And the truth, fundamentally, is why we have the society that we have. Perhaps in our society today, we've forgotten a little bit of that. Maybe we've forgotten the fact that we assume that things were always this easy, and that the understanding of the world and science and truth, as far as a transcendent type truth or whatever, we've forgotten that these are things that humanity has struggled with through the millennia. And I'm not saying we have it right, but I say that nobody's done it better yet. And the only way that can be facilitated is if people are allowed to kind of express good and dumb ideas to each other without the ramifications of the state becoming involved or the church becoming involved. That's not a thing, fundamentally, in Islam. And that's a problem. Now, and as long as the gatekeepers within Islam are the orthodoxy sees the Quran and the Hadiths as the inspired word of God that cannot be changed or altered, and only a few people within that religion who are deemed as religious scholars can have a say on what the doctrine actually means. You're not going to have a critical mass of population that is going to openly speak different ideas, because in Muslim majority countries, if you are professed anything other than Islam, you're at least in for a hard day. And at the most, you're in for an execution. But it doesn't lend itself to truth. It doesn't. And this is where I come back to, should we be over there? I'm not going to sit here and say that there isn't a powerful message in Islam that speaks to the fundamental being of people. That sense of belonging. One thing I did see about the Middle East is their sense of community is way more than we have here. Look at our country right now. We're a mess. We are an absolute mess in this country. We're so polarized. We can't seem to agree on anything. There's different camps within our own country who are ready to pull the trigger on one another simply because they don't like what the other person is saying. People live in neighborhoods their entire lives anymore, and they don't even know their neighbors. That doesn't exist over there. So, the Sunnah, the body of Islam, the people, which is one of the pillars of Islam. The reason why it's one of the pillars of Islam is there's a sense of community in there, and that's powerful. That's a very powerful thing. If you're part of the body of Islam, you belong to something bigger than yourself. Now, you give some things up for that, or things that we might value here in the West, but you gain something as well. It's not like they just give it up and that's that. They gain something out of that. And it's hard to say which one's more powerful or which one's more important. I don't know. I have my opinion on what I think is more important, but I think that their focus on community is something that we might maybe try and take a page from. Our solidarity within our country. Think about the feeling that everybody had in this country after 9/11, when 9/11 happened. There's a certain solidarity within Islam, but it's like that all the time. Imagine that. Imagine how powerful that is. That's tough to beat. And if we sit here and we pretend like all this is going to go away if we leave it alone, it's not. It's absolutely not. It took the West a long time to come to these conclusions and these ideas about truth. And it takes a lot of thinking and pain and contemplation and study and just inner turmoil to try and come to a conclusion where you come to the conclusion of the seeking of truth. Because to seek truth means you got to like die inside somehow. I think a part of you guys has to die, and that's a painful process, so that you can kind of be reborn in a way. That's my estimation of it. But to belong to something, and get all the benefits of what it feels like to be part of, say, a tribe, that's powerful too. That can be as fulfilling as the fulfilling that you might get from seeking the truth. The difference is, when you seek the truth, there's always doubt. um, because you have to stay humble if you want to continue to try and transcend. And within Islam, in a lot of respects, there is no doubt. There's certainty. And certainty, again, is a powerful force. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's powerful. So should we be in the Middle East? Yes and no. If we want to show that we have to build a moral high ground. We can't simply throw our hands up and go, F it. We're just going to kill them. That doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's the easy answer. Our system was not founded on the easy answer. Our founding fathers did not risk their entire livelihoods and their lives to be labeled as traitors when they signed the Declaration of Independence and they sent it off to England, who was the greatest world power in the world at that time that the world had ever seen. When they decided to go to war against England or Great Britain, they did so knowing what the cost of that was going to be. They didn't take the easy answer. They had the moral high ground. They took every opportunity they could to resolve the situation amicably between the Crown and themselves, because they saw themselves as British citizens. But when they signed that Declaration of Independence, they knew the cost of losing was their lives and their families living in poverty and having everything stripped away from them, and even potentially dying. But that's what they believed. They believed they were right. They believed in the truth. And they fought a very difficult struggle over the course of the next 6 years to get there. And even then, after the revolution was over with, they fought amongst themselves on how to best set up a system which would allow for our country to grow and to be a flexible government that was not tyrannical, that gave the ideas of the time, these revolutionary ideas, an opportunity to work. And it has worked. Miraculously, it has worked. If we want to win, we have to have that moral high ground. We have to establish that moral high ground. Because there may come a time when we have to use force and really use force. And if it's just like if you're a parent and you have to discipline your child, you give your child the opportunity to succeed first. And then if they fail in their opportunity to succeed, then you must discipline them. But you have to give them an opportunity to succeed first. You just don't arbitrarily do that, because in the eyes of the child, or in the eyes of anybody you're going against, if you just swiftly come back with discipline, they can perceive it as themselves as being a victim. But when you give them an opportunity to succeed, then when you have to discipline, you go, okay, we gave you this opportunity to do the right thing. Was that unreasonable? Okay, it wasn't unreasonable. Now you've taken the decision out of my hand. And that's what I mean by that, is we have to stay on the moral high ground. We have to show that our system is better. That the freedom of thought, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, basically, liberty, messy liberty, but liberty, the sovereignty of the individual. But to show how that works and why it's better. And that's going to take a lot of reservation. That's going to take a lot of restraint. That's going to take a lot of patience. And yeah, sometimes that might mean we have to get slapped in the face a couple times. But that's not weakness. All that's doing is it's a win-win for us. We either get slapped in the face a couple times, and now we have the justification to do what needs to be done, or they correct themselves. But we cannot do that if we go all in right off the bat. So anyways, that's a very rudimentary discussion on that. I know there's a lot more to it. Again, if you got questions, if you want me to answer anything on, I've done quite a lot of studying on it, but I'm still limited in my understanding of it. Feel free to ask, comment. I don't have any reservations talking about this, and if I don't know an answer, I will research it and do what I can, or at least maybe point you in the right direction to some place or someone who can. Anyways, good to see you. Have a great day.